Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. We welcome everybody to today's hearing on collusion in ESG investing. I will now recognize myself for an opening statement. The American economy has grown into the strongest in the world on the foundation of free market capitalism. That's because competition results in lower prices and more and better goods and services for all Americans. As the legendary economist and Nobel laureate Milton Friedman explained, quote, "There has never in history been a more effective machine for eliminating poverty than the free enterprise system and the free market." Collusion, on the other hand, raises prices and reduces both output and consumer choice. Thus, antitrust law aims to protect competition and prohibit collusion. In fact, the Supreme Court has described collusion as, quote, "the supreme evil of antitrust." Despite these long-standing economic and legal principles, the climate cartel is engaged in anti-competitive collusion to impose radical environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, goals on the American people. In his testimony to this committee, Andrew Behar highlighted the 3 C's of collusion. They collaborate, convene, and coordinate. Gee, it's like you wanted to say the word collusion, but you didn't say it, so you asked ChatGPT to give me an alliteration, to go to the thesaurus and find 3 words that are like collusion but not collusion. These were his words: collaborate, convene, and coordinate with other members of the climate cartel to impose their ideological agenda on the American people. This climate cartel consists of left-winged activists, dominant financial institutions, and the groups and initiatives that facilitate the collusion among them. Specifically, groups like Climate Action 100+ expressly require the investors who join them to pressure the companies they invest in to, quote, decarbonize and reach net zero emissions. Asset owners like California Public Employees Retirement System, or CalPERS, and asset managers like Arjuna Capital then use the investments they control to force companies to disclose their carbon emissions, to reduce their carbon emissions, and to adopt governance mechanisms that enforce these commitments, even though these commitments are bad for investors and consumers. The climate cartel engages in a series of escalating pressure tactics to force American companies to act against their own self-interest and adopt its desired left-wing policies. First, the climate cartel leverages its investment holdings to demand meetings with corporate management. If corporations refuse to cave, the climate cartel then escalates to filing shareholder resolutions, demanding that companies take action. Groups like Climate Action 100+ then, quote, flag these resolutions, drawing greater attention to them and making them even more effective. If companies still fail to bow to its demands, the climate cartel then seeks to replace members of their boards of directors. Notably, the climate cartel did so at ExxonMobil in 2021, replacing 3 directors with members of its own choosing. The climate cartel's commitment and demands reduce output and raise prices for American consumers. There's no way to reach, quote, net zero without reducing production and diminishing the American standard of living. These negative impacts are especially pronounced in the fossil fuel, aviation, and agricultural sectors. In other words, the very industries that allow Americans to drive, fly, and eat. For example, the climate cartel has said that fossil fuels must, quote, stay in the ground to reduce carbon emissions. Similarly, the climate cartel has called for reducing the number of airplane flights by 12% and capping passenger air travel to 2019 levels. Likewise, the climate cartel has called for cutting American beef consumption roughly in half because, quote, cows are the new coal. This sort of anti-competitive collusion has been illegal under the U.S. antitrust laws for more than a century. Yet the Biden administration has refused to take action to enforce the law and protect American consumers. In today's hearing, we will investigate the climate cartel, its anti-competitive collusion, and the harm it continues to inflict on the American economy and people.